Hello everyone and good evening. I'm Kelly Beatty coming to you live from the studios of Chelmsford Telemedia. And I'm here with my partner in crime, Glenn Thoren. We're going to be bringing you the results from today's election here in the town of Chelmsford. It's 8 o'clock and the polls have now closed. It's been an exciting day, maybe not in terms of how many people actually showed up to vote, which we'll get into in a second, but for the fact that for the first time in 10 years, we have a completely new set of precincts and more precincts and different places to vote. So we're going to try to unpack that as we start to wait for the results to come in. Again, we have now 11 precincts to get those results from. The polling places are at the Senior Center for precincts 1 and 2, the new precincts 1 and 2, McCarthy Middle School for 3 through 8, and the Town Hall for precincts 9, 10, and 11. So that's a lot of numbers to try to keep track of. We'll do our best to do that. But first, Glenn, I wanted to sort of try to unpack a little bit all of these new precincts and how they came to be. It really is all about the census, isn't it?
Every 10 years, whether you like it or not, somebody's going to be looking for how many people live in town. And it obviously is a challenge, certainly for the town employees and the town staff to decide how to divide up the town as equally as possible without sending people into new precincts that they wouldn't even recognize.
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of new numbers here, and I was just commenting a little bit earlier today, my precinct 5 from the old precincts is now precinct 7. And precinct 7 from the old precincts is now precinct 5.
And we used to be both in precinct 5 and now we're split.
Now we're split.
We're in pitched battle against one.
Well, I don't think so. But so now I'm in precinct 5 and I just have to remember 5, now I'm in precinct 7. See, it happened.
There you go.
I'm in 7 and I have to remember it's not 5 anymore.
And you can see the new precincts up there. And the reason for this has to do with the census. And after many, many years of relatively stable population, in the last 10 years, Chelmsford has jumped from 33,000 residents to about 36,000, roughly an 8% increase. And because of that, the state requires that voting precincts have no more than 4,000 people in them. And so anticipating that we were going to have more precincts, way back last summer, the administrators at Town Hall, Town Clerk Tricia Zuris, set about expanding the number of precincts, dividing up the lines to keep them as even as possible. And interestingly, those were submitted to the legislature well in advance of any kind of redistricting for the state legislators. And guess what? They ignored all of that and used the old precinct maps. So that explains why, for those of you who live in precincts 3 or 5, you'll notice that there's a 3A and a 3B, a 5A and a 5B. And that will come into play when there are state elections, because the A's will have one kind of ballot and the B's will have another one. It is a little bit complicated. And I'm not surprised, wouldn't be surprised if people showed up the wrong places.
It's government. It's government. So you get what works for them, not what makes sense.
Right.
You know, so that's the big difference.
Right. And so consequently, it has, in addition to all of that, for you, the voters, trying to figure out where the right place to go, it has caused a wholesale recasting of the way that we have town meeting representatives. And so you might recall that when we had 9 precincts, there were 18 elected town meeting reps in each of those 9 precincts for a total of 162. Now, that number, 162, has to be divisible by 3 because the town meeting reps are elected on staggered 3-year terms. So with 11 precincts now to deal with, and 10 were considered, but they decided to jump to 11, then what has happened is there have now been a drop in the number of town meeting reps per precinct to 15 instead of 18. And so 15 times 11 is 165, which is roughly the same number. And so consequently, everybody who was a town meeting rep before, regardless of the duration left on their term, had to apply for re-election. And that you saw that reflected on your ballots today. Everyone was up for re-election. And how are they going to sort out who gets to serve for how long, Glenn?
Well, the way it originally started back in 1989, and when we had a couple of other adjustments over the years, is the top ballot getters, the top third, in this case the top 5, will be serving for 3 years, and the next 5 will be serving for 2 years, and the next 5 will be serving for 1 year and have to run for re-election. And they did that before, but it was, instead of 5, it was 8.
Right.
And so that's a change that was made. So the elections are going to be a little bit more. I'm sorry, 6. The elections are going to be more compact. So you'll get 5 people instead of 6 people running for re-election as they turn through the process of the years.
And one of the things I've noticed watching town meeting, and you are a more closer observer of this than me, is like we don't have enough people stepping forward to being town meeting reps as it was, let alone now. Now, we were looking for 15 people in each precinct. How did we do?
So this was very interesting because very few precincts had 15 or more people. In fact, Precinct 2 had 16, Precinct 3 had 15, and Precinct 11 had 15.
Yes.
You're an 11.
I'm in Precinct
all right.
11.
So all the rest had less.
Right.
And a lot less in some cases. Precinct 1 had 8. So there was 7 open slots, if you will. Right. Will somebody write in somebody to help become a town meeting rep in that precinct, or will they be left with fewer votes than other precincts?
And Precinct 1 is now North Chelmsford, Vinyl Square, that area.
Right.
Okay.
And Precinct 3 had 15, and Precinct 4 had 13, which was too short. Precinct 5, my precinct, now that it's I'm sorry, not 5, I'm in 7, excuse me. The new Precinct 5 had 10, so they had 5 slots open. And I did meet a couple people from the new Precinct 5 that were standing out there asking people for write-in ballots, which was good. But still, they've got to get 5 people.
And so the town clerk is not empowered nor disposed to actually find people to fill up the missing slots.
You have to want
So
to
those
do it.
precincts, like Precinct 1, is going to be short in terms of the representation
Correct.
at town meeting until the next election minimally.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because you can't put people into the slot after
Just
the
because
election if they had no votes.
Right.
And if you put in, if one person writes in a name with 1 vote and they have enough openings in that precinct, they're elected.
Wow.
That's the way it works. And just to go through the rest of the list, in 7 they have 9 people running for elections, so they've got 6 openings. In 8, they've got 12 people running. Precinct 9, they've got 11 people running. Precinct 10, they have 13 people running. So there are a lot of open slots there, and yours, they have the full 15. The other thing that was interesting is, if they had most of the previous town meeting reps running again, there would be a lot more people on that list. But some of them are just not running any longer. And of all those precincts, and counting how many people were in there, only 11 new people in the entire town showed up to run for town meeting rep. 11 people that
At least to the point of getting on the ballot.
getting on the ballot, right. Now, I expect there will be a lot of write-ins across the town. So it's going to take some time to get the final map, if you will, of who's a town meeting rep, because Trish has to find all the ballots with write-in names and set them aside and determine, who are these people.
Right, right. And so we will be bringing you the results of the election, especially the 2 primary contested races, which were for the select board and, excuse me, also the school committee. As they come to us, we want to thank, we've got some volunteers scattered around. Amy Totten is at the Senior Center for Precincts 1 and 2. Colleen Stansfield is at McCarthy, which is where the lion's share of the precincts are voting, and Sam Chase is at the town offices for precincts 9, 10, and 11. So, as we get those results, we'll convey them. We have for those of you who were here this time last year, in the midst of COVID, it was an interesting time. We had a sort of technological meltdown, and we resorted to a whiteboard, which was a lot of fun, but a little bit
but confusing.
Yeah, so we're a little bit better off this year, and we'll be bringing.
We'll give it our best shot. But Pete Padula and Chelmsford Telemedia has set it up so they're going to get calls in from the people that Kelly just mentioned, and as quickly as they can transfer what they have for the count in each precinct onto a big board that we can look at.
Right. So let's talk about those 2. There's actually 3 contested races: the trustees for the public library, the school committee, and the select board. Let's take the select board first. We have, like most of the major offices in town, there are staggered 3-year terms. There's 5 people on the select board. As it turns out, this time, Pat Wojcik and Virginia Crocker Timmons, their terms were expiring. they both chose to run again. So they are incumbents running. And they were joined in vying for those 2 seats by Aaron Drew. So we have a newcomer there. And similarly, in the school committee, we had 2 of the seats on the school committee, those held by John Moses and Maria Lourdes Santos, were open, and they are also running for re-election. They are incumbents. And Rodney Cleaves threw his hat into the ring to vie for one of those 2 seats. Now, Glenn, you're a pretty keen observer. What do you think of the dynamics going on
Well,
here?
we've been watching elections for decades and decades. It's very, very difficult for 2 people serving on a select board or a school committee who are doing a decent job and not causing a lot of problems to lose an election. It just generally doesn't happen. If somebody's very problematic, or if there, instead of 3 candidates, there are 4 candidates and some strong candidates come in, you might have a switch out. But generally it's somebody decides not to run, so you have an open seat, new person will be able to come in and get, that's a very interesting election. But I have to say, Virginia Crocker-Timmons ran an outstanding campaign. I got an early letter from her. I got a postcard last week from her. She got her signs around town.
I was going to say, if yard signs were any indication.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, she has.
But sometimes they're not.
That's right.
I've found out many times that yard signs don't vote, but people vote. And so Virginia had a very nice campaign party. I went to that as well. So she's got strong support across town.
And she's been serving for the last year as the chair of the
She's the
select
chair,
board.
right.
So
People
that gives
see
her
her.
visibility and such.
A lot of elections are name recognition.
Right. It's also the case that in the select board, taking nothing away from Aaron Drew, she's a relative newcomer to the political scene. She's served for one term on the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is not a slouch committee by any standard. I mean, that clearly requires a lot of time and attention and paying attention to the details. But it's not like, for example, Sam Chase running who once was on the board, Board of Selectmen at that time, suddenly throwing his hat back in the ring and wanting to have another go at it.
That would
or
be
like
interesting.
Pat Wojcik, who was off the board for one term and then decided to run again.
But she's
and
back on the board.
She's back on.
Right.
So there was kind of a disparity in the odds, or at least the way the matchups were set up.
So I'm going to go back to a lot of it is name recognition. If you know somebody is holding a position and they're doing a decent job, you tend to want to vote for them to stay doing a decent job. If there's a lot of controversy and problems, that would change the complexion of the election. But that isn't the case with anything that we're looking at right here. What impresses me, I had a chance to speak with Aaron Drew, is that people want to get engaged in the town at a higher level.
Right.
And I think that's very, very complementary to the kind of town we have that people want to engage.
Right.
I wish more would do it as town meeting reps.
Right, and so we're getting our first results here, actually. We have, they're being hand typed into our database here, so bear with us. But this is for Precinct 1, which is now North Chelmsford, Vinyl Square, that area. And the turnout has been not stellar, but Virginia Crocker-Timmons has 170 votes, Pat Wojcik 137, and Aaron Drew 89. And so that is sort of in the order that they appeared on the ballot. For the school committee, Rodney Cleaves is 83, John Moses 113, and Maria Lourdes Santos 148. So the incumbents are holding sway, at least in this very, very preliminary first taste of the vote.
Well, you look at precincts 3 and precincts 4, you'll see the weight of the votes is going to the incumbents, and pretty much the same for the select board as well.
Right. We now have, and I have to keep refreshing my screen here.
Or you could look up at the screen.
Or I could look up
looking
right
at.
here, and so we're actually seeing now, as Glenn was saying, we have precincts 1, 3, 4, and 7, and it's pretty much as we were talking about, and now they're really coming in quickly. This could be a 15-minute show.
And we don't have to go to the whiteboard, which is good for us.
Virginia Crocker-Timmons is holding the lead. Pat Wojcik does not seem to be yet in any kind of danger of losing her seat. Erin Drew is running a strong third, I would say. In the school committee race, John Moses, he's the vice chair of that committee at present.
I think so.
Yeah, and he is leading. No, I'm sorry. Let's see. No, Maria Lourdes Santos has the largest share of the votes with 1,089. John Moses 870, and Rodney Cleaves 542. So now we already have most of the votes in that we're going to get. We're already picking up precinct 8. Interestingly, to me at least, is that we don't yet. Maybe they're there and they're just not being keyed in yet. Precincts 9, 10, and 11, which are the town offices,
right,
which is where the clerk's office is. We don't have those.
Well, we'll blame
yet.
Sam Chase for not.
Right.
Either that or he's calling in and the phone here is busy.
Right.
You know, so you can see from the way the votes are laying down right now, and the difference between, you know, Erin's vote and Pat and Virginia's vote, and the difference between Rodney's vote and John and Maria's vote, that the election is pretty well determined with the precincts we've looked at right now. And the newcomers have done well. They've gotten a lot of votes, but the people that are serving the town now, apparently that the voters believe they're doing a good job.
And so, you know, let's reflect on the last 2 or 3 years. COVID got in the way of everything for everybody.
Everything.
Right? And this has a couple of different manifestations. For example, Maria Lourdes Santos, I think she's on her first term on the school committee, and she said point blank, I didn't get a chance to accomplish all the things I wanted to accomplish. That's why I'm running again.
And that's a very good statement, because number one, there were things she wanted to accomplish.
Right.
Which means, if there are things she wants to accomplish, then she's got a list of priorities that she wants to execute and improve the schools. But some people in the history of Chelmsford have shown up just to sit in the seat and had no list.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever happened, well, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't do it. But Maria is the kind of person, and I'm not surprised, that has a list of things that she thinks she can do. And that's what gives us a great deal of encouragement.
And so to your point about that things are going pretty well, COVID notwithstanding, you look at the sort of traditional metrics of how the school board in particular, they haven't come back to town meeting and say, town manager didn't give us enough money, we'd like to get more out of this budget. The superintendent, Dr. Jay Lang, has done, by most accounts, a pretty credible job of holding things intact and advancing some initiatives and so forth. We didn't hear a lot about school mask mandates, fights over that.
It's been handled reasonably well at the state level, and people aren't trying to keep everybody masked for all eternity. But the other thing that you hear a lot about around town is that the town manager and the superintendent of schools work extremely well together. Mm-hmm. And that is really what you want, because you don't want them competing for funds, you want them negotiating, you want them planning ahead if something's going to be needed in the future to back away from maybe capital budget at the town and doing some capital improvements at the schools. So to have Paul Cohen and Jay Lang work this well together is a compliment to both of them as leaders and to the way the town is run. I mean, that's the best situation you can have, because you can't print your own money. You've only got so much, so you've got to negotiate how you use it.
Right. And on the select board side, there has been a fairly drawn-out process involving the contract for town manager Paul Cohen.
That's right.
And the board has, has much like the Supreme Court, right? There are sides here, and on the people who have been vocally in favor of Paul Cohen are Pat Wojcik and Mark Hirota. And on the other side, maybe not so much, are George Dixon and Ken Lefebvre. And so did Virginia Crocker-Timmons kind of sit in the middle? Was she kind of the swing vote in all of this?
I don't look at any of those three as a swing vote, because they have generally, looked with, say, a very big magnifying glass on what Paul Cohen is doing. And any one of them could support a contract for Paul. Mm-hmm. But George definitely will not be doing that, from everything that I've heard him say. And Virginia and Ken may. It depends on how some things settle out. We've got the police contracts with the sergeants union and so forth that are still in play. but generally they've given him good reviews. And when you give somebody good reviews, it would make common sense to me, as a previous manager of some large groups, that if you're getting good reviews, you should, in the case of public service, get a contract. You know, and when you don't get a contract, it becomes very concerning for the people in town. So what is going so wrong that you don't want to keep this guy?
Right. And I heard maybe throughout the course of the debates, the League of Women Voters and such, that for the town manager not to have a contract could affect our bond rating and our ability to raise money?
I don't know. I mean, that kind of makes sense, but you'd have to talk to the bond agencies.
Well, you know, in terms of like the rating agencies look for stability in government administration and so forth.
That's one of the factors, but also they look at the stabilization fund. They look at how the funds and how the income comes in through taxes and other means, and how the expenditures seem to match what the town is trying to do. If the town is physically deteriorating, irrespective of how much you love your town manager, then things aren't going to work out well.
By the way, for those of you who've been watching these results come in, we're sort of physically unable to handle all of the town meeting rep parts, and also I don't know if we're going to be able to squeeze in the trustees for the public library. We'll certainly get those results to you at the end if we can, if nothing else, the totals on that. So one of the things that has been, you know, there are these sort of overlaying elephants in the room. One of them was COVID, and the other was the infrastructure money that the town has received, the roughly $10 million that the town of Chelmsford will have to spend on things.
Right.
And it's interesting. I was going down the list. It turns out that this is a board of the select board. They're the ones divvying up this pot of money in consultation with the town manager and the departments. And I highlighted here. I don't know. I'll show this to the camera. This everything I've highlighted in yellow here. These are all HVAC systems throughout the town. One of the big items that was addressed by this money is, and we heard a lot of this during COVID times, how the circulation systems were, you know, a kind of a handicap and putting people at risk. And so a lot of that money from the infrastructure bill is going to be going to improving those.
I think, you know, part of the guidance in getting money in the first place is, you know, in the school systems and other buildings for the town, was to improve the cleanliness of the air. So you weren't, because of old systems or poor ventilation, you know, shooting virus all over the building. You know, and so if you improve the HVAC, and
as we now know, that's the sort of, you know, the prime mover of the virus. It's less about the doorknobs and more about what you're breathing.
That's right. That's right. And you know, I won't get into the mask debate about how effective masks are, but you know, you and I are both scientists, engineers, and so forth. I mean, the data is out there. But oftentimes people don't look at the data, and they make decisions based on, you know, what feels good.
Right.
But I'm glad to see they're doing that, because obviously an improvement in the HVAC systems will last for a long time if you maintain them. One of the things that we might want to talk a little bit about is some of the questions on the ballot as well.
Yes, I would.
Because...
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure a lot of people who went to the polls today were surprised to have a backside of their ballot with 4 questions that very little was said about during the course of the campaign. You did not appear before the League of Women Voters to talk about this, but I understand you had something to do with some of these.
Well, I found it, you know, partly interesting, partly, you know, corrective actions taking place by the town meeting. The first question was, you know, shall they have a 4th member for the housing authority? And that's just, you know, a good thing to do, to have an additional...
And specifically a tenant.
Right.
Sort of like a representative from the community that the housing authority serves.
Yeah, my heat's not working, my electricity keeps blinking out.
Right.
I mean, that would not be good. So I think that's a good representation. But on the second question, which in a short view, I had...
And all the other 3, the questions 2, 3, and 4, all have to do with town meeting reps.
Right, for which I was one.
Okay.
And my wife stepped back from being a town meeting rep. I had lost a town meeting election. This never happens. It was actually a tie vote a couple of years ago in town meeting. So the town meeting reps had to vote for who they wanted of the 2 people that were tied to be the town meeting rep, and that was another tie vote. And then they tried it a 3rd time with the reps, and that was another tie vote. And so my wife had some family things she had to take care of, so she stepped down and I took her place. So the issue became whether I had to go get signatures to run the next term, or whether I could just put in a letter like I had for so many years. And if you read the charter, all I have to do is put in a letter because I was an incumbent. But the process in the town offices was basically if you were elevated by, just being appointed to a vacancy, you had to go out and get signatures the next time, but that's not what the word said. So I did, as you might expect, research. Other towns had the same problem. So they added the word elected incumbent as opposed to an appointed person. An incumbent is a person serving, so it doesn't matter how they got there. But now you have to be elected to be an elected incumbent to turn in a letter. So that's a correction to the town charter. And the fourth one, the third question is how, again, we vote when we have a tie, and that's fine. The last one is if you get...
This is interesting because as we were talking about, there are going to be a lot of empty seats in the senior center for the Springtown meeting, and it is possible for you to simply write your own name in and become a town meeting rep.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Just like, and I'm sure people did. So when you've got 6 openings, 6 empty seats, it's not going to take too many votes to become a town meeting.
You literally could make that decision in the voting booth.
That's right. And it only takes 1 vote. That's the way the democracy works. And the last question here is,
It bears on that because
how many, if somebody, so you fill up all 15 seats and somebody steps away and there's a few other people that got a few write-in votes, sometimes 2, 3, or whatever. This says that you have to have at least 10 to be considered to be elevated to that position. Otherwise, it's either going to be empty, or I believe that the members of the precinct can elect somebody in some fashion.
And you would have had to have gotten 10 at the previous election.
At the previous election. So if you had 8 people write in, and everybody else had more than 8 people that wrote in your name, then you're not eligible to be elevated. I voted no on that because in a democracy, if you get 1 vote, you should be eligible for consideration. That's just my feeling about it. But to make it a little bit easier for town hall, they want to have at least 10 votes to be considered for elevation. Otherwise, they may be leaving some empty seats there or trying to find some way to fill a seat other than waiting till the next election.
I am trying to find here. Oh, here's what I'm looking for. All right, I have. There's what I'm looking for. Okay.
So you said you're in precinct 11.
I am.
What is wrong with you guys?
I know. I just had the wrong screen up. So we actually now have unofficial totals for the entire vote of the select board, and it would appear that Virginia Crocker Timmons has led the field with a re-election with 1969. Pat Wojcik with 1711, and Aaron Drew, a strong third, but third nonetheless at 1430. And a sort of similar story on the school committee side with Maria Lourdes Santos with more than 2,000 votes, and John Moses with 1,600, and Rodney Cleaves with about 1,000. So the incumbents are holding on.
They, as we expected, and again, Virginia ran an excellent campaign with multiple contacts with the public, and that's what you need to do in order to make sure that people know that you really want to run for the office, and they know you're in the office. And if you don't run a campaign or a minimal campaign, you run a risk, of being overtaken. And so I'd be curious to see if we got any answers on the ballot question, so I'll have to wait till tomorrow for that.
You will. And by the way, my understanding is that Pat Wojcik is on her way down here to the studio, so we'll have a chance to speak with her.
Good.
And find out what is in the offing for. I guess we'll have her sit in between us.
I might just slide over there so Pat can sit here.
Or
I think there's a chair over there.
You could hand her your microphone or something like that. We'll see how that goes when she gets here. The it's what I see here, and we don't have, if assuming that everybody voted for 2 people, there's something like maybe close to 4,700 votes there divided by 2. That's 2,300 people, and there's 20,000 registered voters in town. That's not a,
I was looking at about 10%, and
Yeah.
that's roughly in that range.
Right,
come
10 to
out for this election,
15%.
Right.
And,
Which, like I had suggested at one point in time, half humorously, if there was a ballot measure every year that had something to do with money, more people would show up. Like,
right.
if you don't vote, your taxes are going up $100.
Right. Right, like an override or something.
Something like
that.
And everybody shows up.
That's right.
You just.
And so, from your purview, does a dependable demographic of people tend to vote even when you're getting only 10 or 15%?
Absolutely. So we spent a lot of time, my wife and I did, we went to vote together today this afternoon about 2 o'clock, and we talked to some people who were holding signs and some people who were asking for write-in votes. And what I saw between, let's say, 2 and 2:30 were mostly of the older generation. I didn't see that many young people, let's say under 40, coming in to vote. It was a lot of senior citizens, some people in walkers, some people had oxygen with them and stuff like that, but they consider voting an obligation to the town and to society to go in and vote. And my next door neighbor just happened to show up while we were in there voting, and he brought his 2 girls with him. And I said, that's exactly the right thing to do, because if you bring kids in with you to vote, they understand that that is an important thing. Because you do it, and your wife does it, and your kids are there with you to watch you vote, so it's important to them. Now, my kids vote all the time, so that's just the way they were brought up, and it would be nice if everybody was brought up that way.
Right. And so, with the new normal of work, right, you can't even really say, well, it was a work day, and so no one had a chance to, leave their office to come over, because most everyone in their offices, maybe they needed to put on shoes and didn't want to do that in order to get down to the polls.
I like the fact that it's one day, and the fact that the schools were dismissed early today. If it was a national election, there would be no school today. It's good to have it focused on at one point in time for the town. It's not like you can get to vote for a month like in national elections. I have trouble with that concept. But if it were on a Saturday, it wouldn't be that bad either. If people weren't going away for some reason on a Saturday is certainly more convenient for anybody who would be disturbed by work. But right now, so many people are working at least some days from home. I would pick a day that I had to vote to work from home. Right. So I could slip out at lunchtime or whatever and go vote without any problem.
And the polling hours are pretty generous.
It is, yeah. It's 7 to 8. 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Right. So those are good hours. You either go first thing or you go last thing. What makes it a little bit more difficult is the location of McCarthy. It's a long way from South Chelmsford. Right. So when it was at Byham, I could very easily pop into Byham and go to work. Yeah, well, I could. Yes, exactly. I jog by there all the time, but I could go into Byham and just take right off and go to work, and it was very, very little disruption. To go to McCarthy, I'd have to go an opposite direction through a good part of the town, then I'd have to come back and then start heading in towards Bedford or Cambridge or wherever I was working at the time.
Now, I want everyone to know that the numbers that you saw reflected on our tally sheet are unofficial. They are relayed to us by a network of volunteers, Amy Totten at the Senior Center, Colleen Stansfield, at McCarthy, and Sam Chase at town offices. And so not only are we subject to human error in getting all these numbers typed in, but also the town clerk hasn't probably factored in absentee ballots and other things. But there are no close races here, at least in these two.
The differences are so sufficient you can't make up any of those differences with absentee ballots.
Right, and Pete and Vila, excuse me, if we're still in contact with those volunteers, if they can perhaps get us numbers for the library trustees, that might be interesting. There are 2 races here that didn't have enough people for the number of seats that were available. Both of them reasonably important. The planning board, which is one of the backbones of this community, had only 1 person and there were 2 seats open. The housing authority, which has been getting a lot of attention for justifiable reasons, there was 1 seat open with a 5-year term. Nobody ran for that.
Right. Well, for the planning board, it was either by word of mouth or through Facebook or other means that Anita Taniti asked that her name be written in. They'd be curious to see how many votes she got. Or I don't know of anybody else that was writing in for the planning board, but certainly Anita was doing that.
How are we going to handle the microphones?
You want to bring that chair?
Wide shot, you're going to slide over.
I am sliding over.
Do we need another? Oh, we have another mic, a wireless. Okay, great.
I can slide
So
over
we're going
if
to
I
be
don't run over the
we're being
wire.
joined here on the set by Pat Wojcik, the newly re-elected incumbent, wearing her Chelmsford Pride T-shirt, of course. And Pat, there's a microphone slung over the back of your chair there. If you want to just put that to your collar, we'll be ready to go. Maybe your right collar because you'll be facing us. That should work. That
It's a
should
good
work.
microphone.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Welcome back.
It's a relief.
It is a relief.
Sure.
Were you worried about this election? We've been talking about the fact that in both the cases of the select board and the school committee, you had two incumbents running for the two open seats and somebody who's relatively new running against you. Often that could be worrisome for the incumbents if there was something going badly, in that committee. And from where we sat, things have been going pretty okay. What's your take?
Well, I think you could look at it either way. I mean, I guess there's no controversy that much within the committee itself, within the board itself, but there are a lot of things going on with the town. I mean, everybody always complains about roads. We've talked about roads so many times.
Potholes.
Potholes.
Sewer's big.
Sewer capacity, all the stuff with the pandemic that we've just learned about. I was telling somebody today that so much that we didn't know, and now we know that we didn't know, like HVA systems in all the schools and all
Right.
the fire stations and the libraries. And fortunately, we've gotten some funds from the government that we're able to allocate to those to make those adjustments, so that it's going to help us all in general.
Kelly and I were just talking about that because he actually made up a list of where the money was going.
Oh,
And
okay.
And the
HVAC,
highlighted is all the
HVAC,
HVAC systems.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I did notice, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the ones that got deferred and not included was the HVAC system, the ventilation system for the town offices.
And the reason is it's such an old building, it would cost millions of dollars to do that. So they're doing just individual units, like in all the offices to recirculate.
It'd be like air conditioners to.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so meet the new boss, same as the old boss. The composition of your board isn't going to change.
Correct.
And so the dynamics that were there before will remain. You're going to reconvene, I'm not sure what the word is, very
Reorganize.
soon.
Yeah, Thursday.
On Thursday.
Thursday evening.
What's the expectation of who's going to take over as chair of the board?
I don't know. I mean,
It won't be Virginia. Or has that ever happened where?
No, that has happened.
It has. It
That
has.
people have served two consecutive
Two
terms.
Right. I mean,
right.
for forever, it had never happened, and then it has happened twice actually in my tenure on the board. I would like to be chair, but we'll see how the others feel about that, and go from there. We'll find out Thursday.
It's a good test. Everybody should be chair at least once.
Yeah.
Well, if they want to, there's some people that just really have no
And have you
desire.
served as chair before?
I have. Yeah. Yeah, I've served 2 one-year terms as chair.
Okay. So correct me. You served for at least one term initially, then you lost an election, and then this is your second. This will be the beginning of your third term since you've been back on the board.
It's kind of complicated. This is actually the 8th time that I've run. This is the 6th time that I have won. But one of my winning was only like a partial term. It was when Sean Scanlon, I don't know if you remember him,
Okay.
he
He left,
resigned
right.
halfway through his term, and then I was elected to fill out his term. So I've served about 13 and a half years so far.
Wow. So what the town clerk, Trish Zuris, is going to do, she'll have for each ballot going forward, you'll just be sort of automatically included.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah.
It should work that way, shouldn't it, at this point?
So what do you see as the big issues for the board going forward? A lot of people have said, COVID just put a big bump in the road for us. There are a lot of things we wanted to do that we couldn't do. Is that truly the case? Was the 2 years of the pandemic held back a lot of the projects that the town wanted to do, that the board wanted to do?
I think it did. It held back some. Obviously some things continued on, but as the rest of the world was affected by it, supply chain issues and things like that. I mean, we can't build new roads. We can't, do new infrastructure, bridges and things like that without having the right materials to do that. So, and the price is going up. You can't, even with roads, we used to be able to say pave a road for X dollars. Now it's, X times 25%.
And I would imagine, I'm no economist, but every town in the Commonwealth is going to be looking to repaving a whole bunch of roads with all of this money.
Exactly.
The contractors are going to have a field day.
Well, even with the HVAC, it's the same thing there. Because
Yeah.
everybody realizes now that their facilities are not up to par. So everybody's going to be hiring the same contractors to do that.
And with the price of oil, everything that has oil in it, like roads, are going to be very expensive. And people don't know that there's 6,000 to 10,000 other kinds of products that are made with oil. From all your plastics to a whole variety of other things.
Right.
Including cosmetics and what have you. So when the oil price goes up, everything goes up.
Everything goes up, for
Especially the
sure.
delivery of anything you want to get.
Right.
So you yourself, what are your sort of items that you're looking forward to try to accomplish in this coming term?
That's a good question. I mean, I haven't really thought about it. I've been working on campaigning for the past several weeks, and we like I said, we do have so many things on the agenda. We have our goals that that we want to finalize. Some of those are tangible things. Some not so much. Some are intangible type things. I think we'll have to wait and see, what the board talks about when we next get together.
Well, let me offer a couple of,
Okay.
toss a couple out, and you can swing and miss or hit them out of the park, whatever. Sewers, is that something that's going to be,
I mean, that's
take a bigger role?
That's a tough one because there's not a lot of ways that we have that we can increase capacity, and there are options. New development can use a private wastewater treatment system like what's going to go in at the
North Chelmsford,
UMass
right.
West Lowell campus, and even a private, an individual residence can have a septic system like they did back in like Westford does or like Carlisle does. They work fine as long as they're installed correctly and they're tested on a periodic basis and maintained.
In the infrastructure funds, the town got about $10 million, and as I understand it, there's like $2 million or so that hasn't been allocated yet.
Correct.
Is that going to be dealt with fairly soon, or are you putting that away for a rainy day?
I think that depends on what might come up. I mean, we might find out something tomorrow that's critically important that we deal with right now, and that's why we put that aside.
Is there any requirement to spend it within a period of time after receiving it?
We have to program it, I believe, by the end of next year, 23.
That's plenty of time.
And then it has to be used by 2 years after that or something like that. There's plenty of time, right? It's not, we don't have to do it this month.
And there's no shortage of things on the
Requests,
list that you
for sure.
want to do.
Yeah.
Are there any that stand out that are you thinking maybe waiting more for emergency kinds of situations to use that money for, or maybe capital infrastructure?
It might be one-time things like capital. One thing we have right now that just has started meeting is a new fire station study committee to decide. We obviously have our new fire headquarters in the center. The North Chelmsford Fire Station has just been refurbished. It looks brand new
It's
now.
great. They did a great job.
And now we have the 3 other stations, and so there's a committee to decide if we need to have 3, and if so, what to do with them, because they really are not up to par either. I mean, they were built in the time when we had a call fire department, and
Right.
we didn't need to have facilities for people to sleep there.
Right.
And
It's more about, it's not just about, do we have a fire engine and a pumper and a ladder truck there? It's really about the personnel and
Yes.
whether they can be accommodated well.
yeah. So
And so, how about the ongoing issue with Paul Cohen's contract? Do you see a quick resolution for that?
I don't know. We'll see how that goes over the next several months.
Yeah.
I mean, I've made my position pretty clear on that. So
Right.
Yeah, it's still in discussion, obviously.
right.
Right.
And so, are you happy with the campaign the way it went?
Well, I'm definitely.
happy with the outcome?
I'm happy
You got a
with
lot of
the
votes.
outcome. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. So what I just saw the numbers when I walked in here.
Yeah.
Those are the
So-
numbers on the.
So what percent is that? Does anybody calculated that?
It looks like about 10% voter turnout, but you know, we'd have to look at it a little bit more carefully.
Do you mean in terms of the total vote?
Correct.
We're looking
We
at
can't tell how many
maybe-
people
yeah,
voted, so we're
maybe-
just guessing.
Maybe
Oh.
if
People
everybody
vote for
voted for
one
two
or
people, it was
two,
like 2,300 people, which is not going to put
Right.
the house down. You know?
Yeah, I was just curious, yeah. Yeah.
So we're eager to see what happens on Thursday night,
Me too.
and we wish you great luck in the 3 years ahead.
Thank you.
Please keep on doing a good job, and we're going to have Virginia Crocker-Timmons swap out for you. And
Okay.
Pat, thank you very much for joining us, and again, congratulations.
Congratulations, Pat.
Thanks very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And how do you feel your campaign went? Were you happy with the way it went, and obviously happy with the outcome?
I'm happy with the outcome, and I'm thrilled with the way it went. When I decided to run again, the support just came out of the woodwork, and I can't say enough thanks to my team and all the people who really contributed. So,
I commented to Kelly earlier that you ran an excellent campaign. You started out with a letter that had great content in it, and you know, I don't know how many people got it, but I got one. Then you followed up with the campaign flyer last week to
Yeah.
make sure everybody get out and vote, and there was signs all over town. So that's exactly the way you want to make sure that people, number one, know there's an election,
Sure.
know that you're running, and get them out to vote.
yeah,
With a
and
small
I
turnout, you
wanted
want the
people to know
votes.
I was serious about re-electing, and I wasn't taking that
Exactly.
for granted.
Yep.
When did
know.
when did you make the decision to run again, and why?
So I'm going to back up a little before that, if it's okay.
Sure.
About a year ago, I had actually decided that I wasn't going to run, and the reason was because I had my mother with me, and I was her caregiver, and her care needs were really escalating, and I didn't feel I could continue to do both. My mom passed away in October, and I started thinking it through again, and I made the decision basically in December. Something in my gut said, I want to do this again, and this is the time to do it, and I have the time to do it. And since I pulled my papers in January, there's just been a tremendous amount of support, and I've never looked back.
And,
Clearly,
well,
clearly the town thought they wanted you to do it too.
Yeah.
condolences on the loss of your mother,
Oh, thank
of course.
you.
But this all happened while you were chairing the board.
Yes.
And tell us about the additional responsibility, or lack thereof, being the chair as opposed to being in just one of the other seats.
Well, I mean, the additional responsibility is working with the town manager on the agendas each week. There are some other side meetings or conversations, you know, I might get involved with as the chair. But I think the amount of time and stuff is pretty comparable that I put into it. It was really more just putting the time into understanding the meeting topics that needed to come forward and making sure I was prepared to run the meetings.
Always a plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been times when there have been people that have been sitting in the select board seats that don't even read the agenda until they show up for the night of the meeting. That's not happening now. But there were times when you had selectmen that you really had to figure out, they were asking questions where if they read even a little bit of the material, you know, they would know the answers. But fortunately, that's not the case
Yeah.
now. It's much better.
And like when we get questions from residents, they don't just come to the chair, right? So that's not extra work as a chair. They come to all the select board members, and whether I'm the chair or not, I think I have the same responsibility to respond. You
So
know?
when they
So,
ask
so
you-
there wasn't like any incremental amount of time.
When
for
they ask
things
you a
like that.
question, you just, if it was addressed to you, it automatically goes to everybody else as well, or?
No,
you just-
no, most people use there's an email address called Select Board, and most people use that, and it comes out to all the board members, and then
That makes sense.
it's up to us to reply individually if we want to.
And from where you sit on the select board, it appears that the relationships with the schools are pretty good right now.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and from the list that Kelly had come up earlier with the money from the government, a lot of it's going to HVAC improvements, which are very much needed.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like the coordination between the town and the schools, and obviously the DPW comes in on other things that they do, is very good right now.
It is, and I think, I think Jay Lang and the school committee do a really good job coordinating outward as well, so it's
Right, John and
it's
Maria
very
got
strong.
reelected as well, very good.
Right, and we're going to have Maria Lourdes Santos here in just a moment. I was, sorry, excuse me, I was looking at the amazing number of things that this infrastructure money is paying for. How does that, these are things that would ordinarily end up on a capital budget for many of them for the coming year. How is this affecting what we're going to see at town meeting for the fiscal 2023 capital budget? Will it be shrunk? Will it be normal? Are there things that you were going to do that couldn't be covered with this money?
I think that ARPA money was a blessing in that we're able to do so much that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise with the capital requests. And I think the capital requests are about at the same level as they normally are. It's just that we've been able to address projects that might have otherwise fallen off.
So you didn't
because
move capital into this? This is
no, well, no.
There was a fire truck in there.
There's some capital. I mean, you could call some of those capital expenses, but like there was one. I don't remember what it was. A repair upgrade to the HVAC system in one of the schools that didn't really fall under the air quality, so that stayed in the capital plan as one example. But the fire truck, that we don't have to bring that forward now into capital. The taxpayers don't have to take that on into as debt. So
and there's still a couple of $1 million that are that have not been allocated yet.
Right.
Is that going to become a kind of? I know you have to spend it pretty soon. Is that a kind of an emergency fund, a rainy day fund? You're just going to step back and deliberate a little bit more?
Well, what Paul Cohen and the board decided to do was to hold that back. We took care of what we felt were the most urgent needs. And we decided to hold some back because it doesn't all have to be allocated at once, and we weren't sure what else might be coming up that we might want to use those funds for. And so there's also, if you print more columns in that spreadsheet, there's a deferred column for things that we said, well, maybe we'll revisit those in a little bit. And there's one, there's another one that says we're probably not going to fund this using our
It's good to
using
keep
our
a
COVID funds.
list.
And there's nothing that says somebody might not come forward with a new idea that's not on that list. So we decided it was prudent not to allocate all of it right now.
Well, I'll just make sure there are extra potholes in front of my house. So that gets okay.
I've got a lot of pothole questions in this campaign.
No surprise
I'm
there.
sure. So the Constitution of the board is not going to change. You'll be facing, you'll be the same team as you had before. And given that, do you? I know you were careful about questions involving the town manager, Paul Cohen. Do you see that as something that you collectively, the board and manager Paul Cohen, want to get accomplished soon, or do you see it continuing to sort of drag out?
I think it's probably a discussion the board needs to have. I will say, as I said in the debates, I think there are some things that the board was dealing with that were not event-driven, and that I think are just we're going to take some time to work through. And we had the performance review in August. I don't think anybody wants to be in this situation long term, but it's a question of whether we have board members that get comfortable moving one way or the other.
Got it.
So.
And I also want to thank you, by the way, for that.
And I don't want to be evasive. I just really have to be careful because that's all been in executive session.
Sure, of course.
And
Well,
thank you for the thank you letter, because not everybody does that.
Yeah.
And when I was working on Bill Dalton's campaign, we sent a lot of thank you letters after the fact, and people said they appreciate it. I want to tell you that I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
and so just in closing, do you have a list of things that you want to, now that you've gotten this renewed vote of confidence from at least 10 or 15% of the townspeople, what do you want to, in your power, in your seat on the board, see accomplished? What do you want to press for?
So the things that I put in my campaign platform are still relevant. I think that every decision we make impacts quality of life, and we have to keep that at the forefront of everything that we do. We have some real infrastructure issues right now with our road systems and the sewer system, and we're going to have to figure out, how we address those and how we fund them, quite frankly. And then the other part that I pushed on was the planning and, doing that collaboratively. And I think we've made some great progress, and I think we have to continue to do that. There's a couple of things that have come to mind recently as we are looking at other issues in town. Like, I think we need to, I suggested that we need to put a legislative strategy in place because we need more state funding for the roadways for our schools, and maybe we can get some for the infrastructure relative to the sewer. So rather than just having liaison assignments, and having coffee and working those, I think we need a deliberate legislative strategy. And then the other thing I've been thinking about as people ask me questions in our campaign is civic engagement. I know has been on a lot of people's minds in multiple boards and committees, but the youth part of it. And, Bill Recca did like a youth advisory committee, and the high school civics group, they had the great debate last week, and I know last year, and the survey that they did this year. And we have someone who's in college, who ran for the library trustees, which I think is wonderful. So one of my thoughts is, how do we do something to really engage the young adults in our community? And really start to create a pipeline so that we don't have a precinct where we have 5 empty seats, for town meeting reps. Because to me that's sad, and the more we can get people engaged earlier, maybe that'll help with that. So.
Well, again, congratulations on a fabulous campaign.
Oh,
we
thank
look
you very
forward to
much.
seeing you. We'll wait to see how the board juggles and it reemerges on Thursday. But I think most people will see you again next at town meeting, which is just a couple of weeks away. And,
We'll see you there too, Kelly.
Well, at least one night, yes. So thank you again.
Thank
and
you.
congratulations. And if you
Congratulations.
don't mind,
Thank you,
we're going to bring in our next and final guest.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. We're coming to you live from the Chelmsford Senior Center, and we just had a great conversation with the 2 winning candidates for the select board, Pat Wojcik and Virginia Crocker-Timmons. And now we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to bring in a successful candidate for re-election on the school committee, Maria Lourdes Santos. Welcome and congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I love the way you say Lourdes.
What?
It's
How do
my
you say
middle
it?
name. It's L. I always say Maria L. Santos, but it's really Lourdes.
And you pronounce it Lourdes, not Lourdes?
I pronounce it Lourdes, which
Okay.
is the Portuguese
right,
version
right.
of this French name.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And were you surprised at the success that you experienced in this election?
I'm going to say it this way. I'm humbled, and I say thank you to all the voters for supporting me for another 3 years. I really wanted this. I want to have this ability to do some work, get some things done that I wish we could have addressed in the past couple of years.
And you
Oh,
made
you're
a
going to get a
you
shot
made-
at
to
it.
me.
No,
You made
So
a
I
point of
appreciate
that,
that.
during the League of Women Voters that,
Yeah.
that the reason that you're running again is that you have this incomplete on your report card.
In my mind and in my heart, because education is dear to me, very important. I have 2 children graduating from our system this year. I think Chelmsford has a very good system, but it's not always, we can't just leave it there. We need to continue to make sure that it stays right at the top and that we give every child the best opportunity possible. And there are things in the system that I think we can certainly work on to make sure that every child does have that opportunity.
And the parents want the same thing. So,
I
as
believe
you know,
so.
Evelyn was in the school committee for many, many years. So
Yes.
he says, this is hard work.
It is
You
hard
know,
work.
I have to say, I think that being on the school committee is probably the most unsung, important place. And obviously, everyone who is in an elected office is working hard and doing the best they can.
Yeah.
But what you have to bring to the table every day in terms of knowledge of policies and having so many different, the children, the teachers, the staff, It's a lot of work. It is.
We're the biggest employer, really, for the whole town, which is one component of it that's also very, very important, especially in today's world. So we need to really consider that. And Evelyn was key on policies, so that's why I looked at Glenn when he said that. And policy is absolutely important. I
Can't
think
just make it up as you go along.
No, you can't.
So
No.
what are the big items that you want to try to tackle?
Some of the things I think I want to look more and more at curriculum and how that the impact of curriculum is the key to an education system, and making sure that at every level we are making absolutely certain that every student has the ability to access that curriculum in a way that lets them get the best result in the end. And we're going through strategic planning right now. Another thing that I really enjoy and want to see myself continuing being a part of. I'm on that subcommittee, and I'm enjoying it thoroughly. And I think our families are going to see that the result of this whole strategic planning that we're going through is going to result in a plan that I think will be very, very good for everybody in the long run. And I ask families, please continue to give input. A school committee, it's extremely important to hear from our families and to engage with the families about what's going on in their lives and what they need from the school system.
Are you getting that input? Are you getting a lot?
I personally feel that I do get the
Good,
input
that's
because
great.
I ask for it.
Keep asking.
Really,
Yeah.
truly. And I'm hoping everybody will continue to do exactly that. We got quite a bit through COVID.
I was going to say, probably no aspect of town life, town function, was impacted more than the schools because of COVID-19.
Right.
And you lost a year and a half, however you want to measure it. Are you all sort of eager to get back to whatever the new normal is?
Oh, absolutely. But it's going to take time. And it's going to take patience and a huge continued commitment from, I believe, what we have is an incredible staff. They gave so much of themselves to this whole process, and I think they will continue to do so, but we need to remember that, you're an employer too.
Right.
And you need to take good care of your employees. So that's another aspect of being a member of the school committee.
Right. Big problems in the offing? You're going to have to find places for more kids at the lower grades. Pretty soon.
Absolutely. We have this whole building challenge, and we just did a facility study, and the result of that, what we're putting in for through the state is for another middle school.
Right.
I personally feel that it would be wonderful to be able to bring everybody under one middle school, so we have consistency in how kids are learning, and also how staff is.
But if the state handed you a check today, we're still looking at 8 to 10 years before that becomes
is
a
correct.
reality.
It's going to be a challenge, and we're going to have to deal with it. But I like challenges.
Right. Good.
Let's go for it.
We'll just have a few classes take place in the Chelmsford Center for the Arts Town Hall. There's a couple of empty offices there.
Lots
Don't
of
get
empty
carried away,
space.
Kelly. Don't
We
get
have some
carried
empty
away.
space in town. You're offering your home. No, I'm only kidding.
So Maria, how I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear your perspective. How is the schools and the superintendent and the school committee working with the town side, with the Paul Cohen town manager?
Extremely important.
It's very
It really
important. How
is.
things going?
There has to be some collaboration. First, when I ran for this position, I first ran to be a town rep because I really think it's important to understand the whole components of the town and what everybody's needs are. And schools take up a huge amount of the money.
Yes, they do.
Yes, we certainly do. So we need to use it well. But one thing is that Paul Cohen is a friend of the schools in many ways. He collaborates well with Dr. Lang. Dr. Lang collaborates well with him. I was just saying to Pat when she left, it was wonderful today. I was down at the high school this morning. The student council ran a leadership conference at the high school. And Dr. Lang and Mr. Cohen were on a panel together. And they were coming out of it this morning, and I saw them talking, and I said, this is exactly what's important.
Right.
Here is our town manager. He's in our schools. He's on a panel talking to the students. they see the whole wider community, and at the same time, Dr. Lang is here supporting the schools and what we need. And it's exactly what we need to see.
Now the select board will elect its officers on Thursday. How do elections for officers in the school board?
It's fun.
Is it coming up soon? Or?
It comes up right away in the first meeting, typically. I have no.
It wasn't a loaded question. It was.
It's honestly
but
not.
you're
I
free
can
to
tell you
jump
very
in.
honestly. For me, it's not. I don't. I think the chairmanship he's doing very well. Dennis is doing well as the chair. I think another thing is we're a committee. Mm-hmm. We need to work together in many ways to make sure that we need to ask questions. We need to get the things out in front and make sure that we're checking the system along the way. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Lang's work we're his supervisors. But by the same token, we need to be able to discuss things with each other and to get results for the kids. They're what counts in the
Well,
end.
it sounds like things are working well.
I think
you
they're
know,
working
and people aren't
well.
afraid to say how they feel about everything. So everybody's out in the open with what they think should be done.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
That's important.
Well, again, congratulations.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you.
Who got the
Three more
most
years.
votes today? Do we think?
Well, I think she did actually.
Did I
Oh
honestly?
yes, you beat John
All
Moses.
right.
I don't know. Does he owe you a beer? Or
I don't know, but
maybe a nice glass of port.
I can say this. I just want to thank everybody, really, truly, for the support and for the trust. I consider it a position of trust.
It is. I've only heard good things about the work that you're doing. So that's
thank
why
you.
the votes
Thank you
reflect
very,
that.
very much. I appreciate that
Right.
a lot. Thank you. I will try to continue to do my best.
Okay.
Take good
Congratulations.
care.
Leave the microphone for us.
We'll grab that.
That would be important.
Thank you for
You're
coming.
very welcome. And so we are nearing the end of this live broadcast. I apologize that we couldn't bring you more of the results from the election. There was another contested race for library trustee. But in due time, these will all come out. It's been an inspiring and enlightening, I think, hour that we've had together at Glen
It's
Thoren.
always fun, Kelly. It is, and this is a great town to be able to talk about the elections and the workings of the town. It really is great.
And so with that, we're going to leave you and thank you for joining in this evening. Here we are live from the Chelmsford Telemedia offices. Again, we want one last shout out to Amy Totten, Colleen Stansfield, and Sam Chase, who were our poll watchers and provided all the results that you're seeing. Also, Delana Gallant, who was with us here running camera, and the Vilu and Pete Padula, the other members of the CTM staff who helped make this possible. We're very grateful that you tuned in tonight. Glen Thoren, I thank you again for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm Kelly Beatty. We'll see you at town meeting. Good night.